but maybe not.
Well, you probably wanted to, and now you're just feeling more comfortable with me. You can abuse me even more, I guess.
Yeah, you goofball. But you're a goofball, and that's why I love you.
Yeah.
If you weren't a goofball, I'd probably be like, this lame schmuck, I'm not having him on my show.
I know, this UFO stuff is pretty serious, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, have you gotten that? I mean, I have
Yes.
gotten that, where people are like, you need to be more serious.
Yes, I've had that a number of times on my show, and I've had a number of people say that I have a horrible sense of humor.
Oh, wow.
And
I like it. I like your sense of humor.
Or corny or all that. Yeah, it's all right.
I enjoy it. When you decided to do a show, did you set out to do a very serious show, or were you going to be kind of light and just be yourself?
I think the best way to approach anything like this is be yourself. You know, I heard Art Bell say that one time. He said, if anyone out there wants to get into the radio business and wants to do this, all I want to tell you is one thing, is be yourself. And that's not what inspired me. I just heard this, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. But I totally agree with him. I think that if anyone wants to do any type of show, whether it's a podcast or whatever it is, you know, just be yourself. What the heck?
Yeah, that's good advice. Good advice, Mr. Bell.
Yeah.
So this is going to be news to you. And this is kind of fun. My guest for today is a special kind of thing going on here. So my guest for today, his name is Keith Arem. And why is this significant? It's because he is a movie producer. He actually has been in the movie business doing other type of things, and especially in the gaming business, big time. Working on all the biggest top games on all kinds of different aspects. He's got a company named PCB Productions. But what he's now working on is called a movie called The Phoenix Incident. We have actually talked about this movie on our show, but in a different and perhaps less positive light. Well, I didn't get all upset about this whole ordeal, but it was kind of fun. So here's what happened, and you may remember this, I'm not sure. There was a viral kind of thing that happened about a year ago now, where there was a video that was supposedly, military jets related to the Phoenix Lights, and there was a guy who said he was a reporter for a local Phoenix news station or something like that.
That didn't exist. Yes.
Exactly. So we busted him, right? They didn't exist or anything, and we busted this, and he tried to pretend he did. Well, this is the movie, Keith. So I talked to Keith, and I'm saying, when we talked, it was like, what is this all about? And he's a really cool guy. He's like, look, I wasn't trying to hoax. All of that was part of a British release of the movie, the British version. But the American version's coming up, and they're going to do some kind of viral campaign stuff. And so he said, I love, he's really into UFOs, and he highly respects UFO researchers, and he doesn't want to make them mad, and he wants to talk about why he thinks this sort of kind of campaign helps get people interested, and kind of give us some clues and some information to look out for, and then just to also share his interest and enthusiasm about the field, which is really what inspired him and drives him to make this movie.
Yeah, is he going to give any type of warning before he does some type of viral campaign to people like yourself,
It's in my interview. We talked about that.
Okay, great.
So this is going to be kind of interesting because I essentially, to be honest, I did tell him that I'm not so sure this is the right way to go about things, and we talked about that, but he's just a really neat guy. I don't know. You call me a sucker, but I like the guy. And I'm really excited for this movie, and I think when you guys listen to the interview, will hear he's very enthusiastic about this topic and about UFOs, and he's really, I think, genuinely trying to get this topic taken more seriously and out to the public. And he may have done some research that actually may be important to this field going forward. So we're going to talk about all of that, and it's going to be fun to take a look and see what happens with some of the marketing stuff that goes on. And he says, he'll be back on the show in a couple months after some of this has gotten rolling to discuss it. And it's looking like we're working it out. They're going to do the world premiere of the movie at the UFO Congress.
Oh. And good for you. Kudos.
Yeah, so pretty cool. They're getting a lot of attention too from various people in the Hollywood and in the industry that it's kind of exciting. So yeah, this will be controversial. Everybody, I think what's fun about this, what he likes and what we like, is everybody share their opinions. Let us know what you think. Let him know what you think, and I think there's going to be a lot of online interaction from them and from I think he really does care. I think what's cool is that he understands some people might get frustrated by what they're doing, and he's not afraid to come to the Congress and talk to people about it. They're going to have a table and say, hey, what do you think, and going forward, how can I do this better, or at least share his opinion. And that's one thing I feel like I think you do too, especially doing these shows. And, in this field, we don't agree with everybody. I don't agree with you most of the time when you send me a link to a cartoony looking UFO, and I'm like, that's not a UFO, that was Bugs Bunny. A Bugs Bunny episode.
You're a swell guy.
But I think it's fair for him to be able to share his opinions and everything, and it's fun when someone who's really genuinely interested in the topic is doing something different and new out there that'll hopefully, get to a lot of people.
Now, tell me, is this a documentary or is this a film? Like with characters and everything?
It's kind of, I think, documentary style. But it's not a documentary.
So it's using actors, basically.
Yeah. Well, I think that guy, because we figured out, remember, a year ago that it was a Seinfeld actor who was in there.
That's right.
And that was what was so fun.
I remember you mentioning that, too, yes.
Because I'm a Seinfeld fan, and Carl Farnberg, the episode, the guy who used to cry or he didn't cry, but he had to stop what he was doing, and Elaine had to stop because she was going out with him whenever the song Desperado came on. Remember that?
I remember that. Yes.
Desperado. So she was looking for her own song, like Witchy Woman or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, funny stuff.
Great shows. Right.
Yeah, so this is fun. We'll be talking to Keith in a moment. However, first we want to talk to Mr. Willis here about some UFO news. And as usual, let's let you start it off. And what do you got, buddy?
Well, this a UFO was seen over northern California, and a couple of pictures taken. And guess what shape it is? It is a saucer shape? No, it's another triangle. And this was witnessed over Yuba City, which I have actually gone through multiple times. I used to go different ways up to Mount Shasta from the Marin, California area. And I just remember it just seems, I know I've said this before, but that whole Shasta area seems almost mystical. And but anyway, I believe there are a number of sightings around there. So this witness had an uneasy feeling, and I kind of relate to that. I had an uneasy feeling and had to go outside and took pictures of lightning. And when they took pictures, they ran home, transferred the photos, and saw these triangle form. Now, this could be some type of lens flare, or it could be something to do with a phenomenon that was happening with lightning. It's awful hard to say. It was reported to MUFON and investigated, and the case is closed at this time. And this is in Sutter County, up near in Gold Country. And a great area if you're ever out that way. And John Fagel is the one who investigated it for MUFON out in California.
This one has some beautiful pictures. I really love, especially the first picture with it's nighttime, so you see some light. It looks like lightning behind the cloud. You see the lights of the city on the bottom, and then you could see through the clouds and see some stars.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful picture.
It's a gorgeous picture. I love this picture. I made it the feature. However, I'm 99.9%, well, I'm 100% convinced, really, this is flares. But although I have been corrected, a lot of people say it's not lens flares, it's lens refraction or reflection inside the lens or something like that. But here's what I look for to determine that. First of all, they're kind of these bright artifacts or translucent artifacts. The other thing is this. In both of these pictures, it's dark, but there are some really bright lights. One set of really bright lights in both of them. And these lights, you could see, are so bright, they're kind of overpowering the lens, where they're really just super bright and they're doing the starlight effect and everything. So if there's a bright light in a dark image, often there are flares and artifacts. Here's the other thing, is that when you look at the artifact, it will always be pointing directly at the light. And both of these are doing that. So the first one is kind of like this flap thing, and then it's pointed, and it's pointing directly away from the super bright light. And then in the other one, the triangular craft, that one is a triangle, but it's pointing directly away from the really bright light, because that's just what these reflections do. So that's why I'm convinced they are reflections. The triangular one even looks like the pink UFO phenomena. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so which is reflections in the Google
Google
cameras.
Google Earth and whatever, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you zoom in on the triangular artifact, I mean, it looks really neat. It looks like a dim triangular craft of some sort or something like that. But I'm pretty sure that's what these are. There's a lot of controversy. Most people are agreeing with me, but not everybody. So
why would they close this so quickly as an unknown?
I don't know. You got to realize, though, often when it comes to, because a lot of people will criticize the MUFON guys. Not all of them are photo experts. You can imagine with all of these cases coming in, people like Mark D'Antonio or other photo analysts are swamped, and they have their own jobs. And that's the thing. All of these people have their own jobs. They've got to do this work on their off time. And a lot of these states, they only have a couple investigators. A lot of states, they may have
That's
on
true.
the books 12 investigators, but only 2 or 3 of them are doing any work. And so they've got to go through all of these cases. For instance, just last month, because on the first of the month, MUFON always puts out its email on how many sightings there have been. Last month, there were 777 sightings. And so, they've got to go through all these cases as quickly as possible and try to figure them out. And all these unknowns, like I had Robert Powell on not too long ago, a lot of these unknowns, they'll relook at them to determine, what's going on. And I think, just like this guy said, if there's some new information, I'll change the disposition. But as of now, I don't know what it is, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I see the comments below this article. I just read them through them, and I see a lot of the points that people are making. And then there's one diehard down there.
Yeah, there's a
diehard. This is clearly
too.
a craft coming through.
This is a craft. So there's another case with some UFO pictures that I think is really interesting, and we talked about this on your show, but this is a fun story. I was really excited about this story, which is these UFO sightings from Siberia. And the reason I got excited is because we don't often hear much about Russian UFO cases. Paul Stonehill, I've had on my show. I'm sure you've probably had him on, right?
No, have not.
Oh my gosh, you got to have him on your show, especially because you've been to Russia.
I am making a note as we speak.
Yeah, but he's from Russia, and he does a lot of Russian ufology stuff. He's written a couple books with. He works with Philip Mantle out of the UK often.
Oh yes.
And so he's a really cool guy. Does a lot of cases. But I haven't heard much from their media recently. It seems like Russian media is more focused on UFO cases from America or the U.S. as opposed to there. But this is a neat story about this lake, Lake Baikal. And there's a lot of UFO sightings around this lake. Most recently, in a town called Ulan-Ude, there was a sighting of a disc-shaped object with lots of green lights around it. A lady said that her and her son were watching it, and it began to get closer. As it did, two people on the sidewalk that were two men who were nearby also watching it ran away. They ran inside because they were scared. And she said she was just fascinated until her son grabbed her hand and said, "Let's get out of here," because he was scared too. So that was an interesting sighting. There were also some more similar sightings nearby. One of the famous ones is from 2010 is from a nearby town where a gentleman took a picture of 3 green orbs. And that picture is in this story. And then in 2009, in that same town of Ulan-Ude, some red lights were photographed, and that's in this story too. But a lot of really interesting sightings around this lake. Supposedly, earlier this year, a lot of people saw a disc-like object that was described as bright as 3 suns near the lake that disappeared, and then the next morning there were tons of dead fish on the shore of the lake. Experts said that the lake, it had been warmer than usual, and the lake levels were low, so it could have been due to that why there are dead fish, but it was a mystery. But this lake is pretty fascinating too. It's the largest freshwater lake, and it is 5,000 feet, over 5,000 feet deep.
Yeah, just about a mile. Amazing. And I think there's a lot going on, and it's near in that whole area in Siberia in general. You know, there's the Ural Mountains. There's a lot of sightings out that way. And yes, it makes me wonder about this lake. Has anyone ever reported a USO? Have you ever heard of that coming out of that lake, since it's such a incredible area and a lot of sightings?
I haven't heard of that. However, this story did get picked up by various media around the world, and one of the sites that wrote about it did say that they suspect there is a UFO base under the water, and I think it even cited a sighting of something coming out of the water. So people speculate about that.
Right. Yeah.
Pretty interesting, huh?
So it's got to be true then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If someone said it, it's true.
It's what's on the internet.
Yeah, that's right. That's all you need.
Although there's a lot of stuff about you on the internet, too.
I deny it all.
So this is another cool one. This I thought was really neat because the photographs are beautiful, and I love great photography. But this is, and they're not photographs of UFOs, but essentially this girl who works, she's a photographer. She went to school in the UK for film, actually, at the London Film School. But her name is Maria Lax, but she's actually from Finland, and she goes back and forth. Well, recently she went back to her hometown, which is named something that I cannot pronounce. Nor I can't even. I like to try to pronounce difficult words, but this is one I can't do. You have to go to OpenMinds.tv to look at it, and maybe somebody can give me the phonetic spelling so I know. But anyway,
hang on just a second.
Are you going to try?
Ready?
Ready. What am I waiting for here?
You can't hear that.
No.
Oh, it's the way it goes through the computer. Oh boy. Yeah, it's Puda. Well, anyway, I found a pronunciation in Finnish, and it's a little live clip you can play. So if anyone's really curious, all they have to do is Google it, and you can actually hear the pronunciation.
So you're saying all I had to do was Google it, and I could have...
No, it's still hard to... I listened to it like 5 times because I was going to do this story, and then I said, no, forget it, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put myself there.
Too hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
But what's cool is she goes back to this town, and she finds a journal from her grandfather, who was a journalist, And it turns out there was a wave of sightings in the late 60s in that town of UFO sightings. And so her grandfather had gone and interviewed these people and documented what they had to say. And she found this and read through it. And she thought it was fascinating. She said there were things described as far as lights in the sky, strange creatures described, and even people claiming to be abducted. And she's so fascinated by it that she's done this whole photography thing where she's taking pictures inspired by these sightings. And they're not pictures of UFOs necessarily, but they are kind of ominous. They're kind of like, in the dark. They're brightly lit things, like in one case a gas station. It reminds me of a scene from Super 8, but it's a lit up colorful gas station in the middle of the forest, or light streaking across a dark forest, or someone looking out of a window. So it's kind of fun. I like this description she gives. She said she's trying to kind of elicit the feelings that she gets from these accounts. And that they're kind of examining nighttime and the loneliness that seems to accompany it.
Yes, I suggest the listener check out the pictures. They're really beautiful. She's quite talented, actually.
Mm-hmm. And I love that idea, the loneliness that seems to accompany the night, because being around at night, especially by yourself, I love the nighttime. I love taking walks in the night. I love walking downtown or anywhere in the night, especially like where I live. Everybody's in bed, and it just seems so surreal to be around at night with everything so silent. And it feels like there's kind of a blanket of silence around, and it's that feeling that of loneliness. But for me, it's also kind of an excitement, and it's great that she's trying to capture that feeling, because I think whether or not you've seen a UFO, you can understand that feeling. But that feeling does seem particular to UFO sightings, because it does seem that, it's kind of a feeling people have often when they have a sighting.
Very interesting.
Like kind of a personal kind of experience where when you're walking around in the outside, but you're really inside of yourself sometimes at night. Like that, I think.
I think I can relate a little bit to that.
Yeah, just a little. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, I really like her pictures. I think this is really neat what she's done here. So I was really excited about this story.
Yeah. Is that all we got for today?
Well, that's, I think, all we need to talk about. There are other sightings that are out there that are debatable. There's a British sighting where a guy videotaped a UFO, and it's just kind of a little dot in the sky cruising across the sky. He zoomed in on a couple of the images, thinks perhaps it shapeshift, so you could see that. Some people are saying it's probably a floating balloon. Who knows?
Oh, yes, I remember that one. Mm-hmm.
Another account of a chevron shape, and then I just posted today a picture of this Texan supposedly saw a bright light, took a picture of it, and there's just kind of a weird thing in the picture. Some people have said, well, it looks like it's probably a sign on the side of the road, just blurred from crews speeding by in the car. Of course, others disagree. So a lot to debate about and look at. But yeah, always new and exciting sightings. And luckily, we've got Roger Marsh from MUFON, who's always posting some new and different UFO sightings for us to look at. Cool stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's it. What do you think?
I think it's a wrap, man.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Mr. Willis, for joining us and lending us your expertise and your wonderful sense of humor.
Well, thank you, man.
Mm-hmm. And I guess we'll talk to you later.
We'll talk to you soon. All right, Alejandro.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk with Keith. I am very excited, and I called this a surprise, but it's kind of more of a surprise for me just because it's kind of fun. But I'm excited to have on the show Keith Arem.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So you are creative director and president of PCB Productions.
Correct. Yeah, here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. So, and one of the things that we wanted to talk about, and I guess right off the bat, is, well, actually, first, let me ask you what PCB does. I mean, you do film, but you also work in video games and stuff like that?
Correct. Actually, yeah, my background is sort of a diverse background. I started in the music industry. I was with the band Contagion on Capitol Records. I worked in the game industry for the past 20 years. Initially as a composer and as a sound designer, and as a writer and as a creator. And now I've become more of a director. I'm a talent director for many of the top video game franchises like Call of Duty and Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six and Titanfall and games like that. And
cool.
So, yeah, and recently, in recent years, I've started to create a number of books and graphic novels that have been very successful, and that is now turning into my passion for directing motion pictures. So we have a new movie that's going to be coming out in 2016 called The Phoenix Incident.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, yeah, a lot of really exciting stuff. And I guess we have a mutual friend through this, and, he's someone who's going to be speaking at the UFO Congress,
That's right.
Ruben Langdon, and you probably met him, is that through the video games? Because he does, like, a lot of voice acting, and I think they even...
And motion capture, right, and he works on a lot of the big games, and he also works in motion pictures as well, and he has a huge group that he works with out here that has been doing a lot of research into the UFO phenomenon and a lot of the relating sort of topics around that. And so he had invited me to get involved in the group and attend some of their meetings. And I was so fascinated by what they were doing and the crossover into the research that I was doing. And we became very friendly. And he's been helping guide my entrance into the community and making great contacts and people like yourself.
Cool. Yeah, great guy. So, but one of the things, the way I guess I interacted with one of your projects first was months ago. I don't even know if people remember this anymore because it was almost a year ago now.
Yeah, December.
December. So almost a year ago that a video came out alleging to be, kind of a dogfight over South Mountain, which is actually just behind me, during the Phoenix Lights incident, which I know our listeners are very familiar with. And so there was a lot of hubbub around that, and there was a Twitter account for a investigative journalist who said he had released this info or something like that. But being who we are, no, not just us, but others helped, kind of find out that it looked like it was kind of a viral campaign or something. But I mean, what people don't know, because I only found out, more recently, well, for certain, is what you're going to share with us. So what was this all about?
Right. So I guess just to begin with, it was not ever meant as a hoax. This is actually something that was initially promoting the European release, the UK release of my new motion picture, The Phoenix Incident. And that was releasing in England earlier this year. And we're doing sort of an uncensored US version that's going to be coming out in theaters here in February. So what you sort of found was part of our UK release that was part of this campaign for sort of some of the background of what's happening with the film. We have a pretty extensive viral campaign, and it was very interesting to watch it and have to be tight-lipped about it when it was happening because our campaign was kind of quietly coming out, supporting a lot of the background in this. And I don't know if a lot of the audience is familiar with alternate reality games, but there was I Love Bees for Halo and the Dark Knight campaign. Nine Inch Nails did one. There was one for District 9. And it's sort of an extension of some of the other properties we've done where it's an immersive sort of form of storytelling where the audience sort of engages with characters and footage and material outside of the motion picture or a book or a game. And in this case, this was part of our rollout for the Phoenix Incident. So David, the person that was sort of spearheading this, is actually based on a real investigative journalist who I met with, who had shared many of his kind of unbelievable stories. And this guy had been an actual military correspondent and shared some of his stories and experiences experiences with me. And so I was kind of using him as sort of a guideline for creating our documentarian in our film. And the film actually documents one of the largest mass sightings in the United States, the Phoenix Lights. And through my work in video games and working especially on a lot of military video games, we started to interview eyewitnesses and police and politicians and all these military consultants. And we had access to these military contractors and private investigators who started to share their information, finding out that I grew up in Arizona. They wanted to share some of their research and thoughts and background. And that became sort of the basis of what this whole campaign began. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be actually continuing that with the U.S. launch coming up this February.
Mm-hmm. So I guess getting into some of the controversy first around that is that, like you said, you guys weren't trying to hoax people. It was like this immersive kind of idea. Now I know there were some people that were related to this, who voiced a lot of frustration. They're like, why do these? And it's happened in the past. There's been other movies. Right. You and I have talked about The Fourth Kind did this, right. But The Fourth Kind was really shady about it. I mean, right. They never really came clean about what they had done. Right. And they got in trouble in some cases.
Right.
So there's some people that get really frustrated with this kind of alternate reality and feel that kind of hampers research in this field.
Exactly, and that was one of the reasons that I really wanted to reach out to you and to work with people like Ruben and to be part of the community, because for me, I absolutely believe in this phenomenon, and just the idea of life beyond our planet is not even a question. To me, it's just a fact. But the problem is distilling the truth from the fiction that's out there is impossible in this day and age of the internet and so much misinformation that people like yourself and other people that are really trying to research and promote awareness becomes very difficult. And my intention is absolutely not to get in the way of that. And that was one of the main reasons why I even wanted to be here today, was because as we continue to promote this film, we're promoting a bigger message of the need for disclosure and the idea that we need to know what our government and our military knows. And even if it's something that they don't think that we can handle the truth, I think we're in a day and age that we can. And so by using a motion picture to deliver that message, it delivers it on a much larger mainstream message that gets to a very wide audience. And I think that traditionally a lot of the fantastic documentaries and other research that's gone out has sort of catered to within the audience itself that believes there, and people outside of that are either disregarded or it's not marketed or it's not put into a mainstream capacity where people embrace that. And I wanted to really provoke people in the mainstream audience to pay attention to this topic and say that we need disclosure now. Mm-hmm. And that's what our campaign is really about. And I think the thing you're going to see in the coming months leading up to the film is going to be promoting more of that, because if people do believe and people want to believe, then that is a much more powerful emotion than any bit of documentation or anything that a politician can do to block what the public needs to know. Mm-hmm. And so and one of the reasons why I'm speaking about this right now is that this audience and your audience is very important to this cause, and it wouldn't be right for them to think that we're trying to hoax this audience. And if anything, it's the opposite. I want this audience to embrace what we're doing, to question what if this really happened? What if the events of this, are being covered up, or other events? Even if this event can be, attributed to military operations or other different types of reasons, the idea that we're not being told what's happening in the skies above us is not right. As as an American, just as a human, we need to know what's happening. Mm-hmm. And I want this film to be the first step in kind of opening the mainstream public's eyes in doing that. Mm-hmm. And so the difficult part is when you do a viral campaign or when you're doing an ARG, that you run the risk of stepping on the toes of people who are doing legitimate research. And it is important to distinguish that and make sure that those people aren't offended and they're aware as we're doing that. And one of the real faults in our initial campaign is that the UK release was coming out prior to this much bigger release we're going to be doing in the United States with a slightly different version of the film. And that campaign, unfortunately, was discovered in the United States before we had a chance to really talk about it. So I'm glad we're getting the opportunity to do that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it was fun because the actor is in Seinfeld, and that was really exciting for me because I'm a big Seinfeld fan. And when we discovered that just made it a lot of fun. And but the Phoenix Lights, you said you're from Arizona?
Yep, I grew up in Tucson, and I moved out here in the late 80s, early 90s to go to school and then get and work in the music industry.
Mm-hmm. So you were in the area when the Phoenix Lights event took place?
Yeah, so I would go back from Tucson back to LA, and I would just go up, through the 10. I would come up from Tucson, go through Phoenix, and go out on the 10 back home and go back and forth. And I had actually just been in Tucson and then going back to LA when it happened. So I actually didn't get to witness it, but friends and family were all here talking about it. Mm-hmm. And obviously there was many other sightings beyond that, and I had seen many things growing up. Some very interesting stuff also down in Yuma that I saw personally. And so it wasn't really a surprise that it happened, but it was something that got national attention. And what was so fascinating about the event was that it wasn't just that event. It was the combination of everything that was happening that month and that year around the world and specifically in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And so as I started to do a lot of research into all those events and everything that was happening, it was this very strange year for us. Arizona in particular had one of the highest numbers of suicides in the country. The per capita was huge. I was doing this research through the Arizona Department of Health Services, and it rose in Arizona drastically, as did missing persons, as did unexplained cattle deaths. And the U of A agriculture department started, researching all this decrease in livestock. And, you can attribute all these things to different conditions and drought and other things, but it was all happening all around this time. And then you had the Hale-Bopp comet coming through right in March of 97, and it was the closest to the Earth in the middle of the month, which is why so many people were out looking at the skies. And then you had the Heaven's Gate cult that had actually been based in Phoenix prior to moving to Rancho Santa Fe, about 400 miles away. And the week after the sighting in Arizona, that cult believed that the aliens were coming and they wanted to exit their vehicles, and they all committed mass suicide. It was the largest suicide in the United States. And that happened about 10 or 15 days after that event. And so there was all this really interesting, very scary stuff that was going on. And then obviously the military explanation and the public outcry and all the different investigation that was happening into that afterwards. And in looking back, for me as a storyteller and researching, and I love to base everything in science and in reality, it was a great place to begin our story and to base a lot of the world on what had already happened.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, are you saying you feel there was a correlation, or it was more that all of those things kind of punctuated the excitement and mystery of the whole event?
That's the big question. I kind of feel a little bit of both. The more investigation I did into the actual sighting, the more it lent itself to what the military was doing there in terms of the operations that were going on. And I know that there's some people that have publicly been very vocal about the fact that there was no military involvement and what that was. Our feeling, and just to give a spoiler alert to the audience, is that we do take, the film does take the position that many of the lights were attributed to Operation Snowbird that was going on with visiting Maryland Air National Guard. But the reason why the flares were being deployed and what other events were happening that night is more of the subject matter of the film. And so I think some of the audience is going to be a little frustrated by that. They're like, well, I know what I saw. I know this was a craft. and then other people have documentation showing the opposite. So our film actually, it's very interesting when the audience gets to see the movie in February. One of the positions that we do kind of take is we kind of present both sides to that. And ultimately, the film is a thriller, and it is sort of about what happened to a group of men that disappeared that same night. And it was actually based on a lot of true accounts of stuff that we had researched. But what was very interesting about it was that we were presenting sort of both sides, and we would give you some information and we would give you disinformation. And from both sides, from the military side, from the civilian side, from the politician side, from the press side, and a lot of the initial feedback and the positive response we've gotten to the film is this sort of blending of reality into our film.
Mm-hmm. Now, kind of getting for some people in the audience, just to remind them, or so they know, of course, in Phoenix we talk about this a lot, but is that later in the night there were some, or I should say, later in the night, the military says they dropped some flares, right. And so many believe that was true. But that does not account for all of the sightings throughout the state that happened, right. Nor the most exciting ones in the Phoenix area. So although there are some researchers who say the military never did drop any flares, and that's kind of the controversy that you're referring to.
Correct. And the thing is that Lutu flares, which is what they had dropped, they are phosphorescent flares that burn for about 5 minutes. And they were saying with the right atmospheric conditions that these things kind of floated in formation for a number of hours. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, that could be multiple sightings. The times could be crossed. They could have a longer distance that they were viewed. There's a lot of different, explanations. I was reading something on Above Top Secret that had a whole thread about that, and it's very interesting to see, some people attribute it to illusionary contours and they see the shape of the flares and they connect it as a ship. Other people say they saw a craft that actually blotted out the lights. And other people talk about they see a formation of crafts and they were all individual and there wasn't a large craft. So it's to me, that's fascinating. And that's why this event and this topic was so compelling, was because here you have something that literally almost 30,000 people have claimed to have witnessed. And you have, the vice mayor, you've got, the senators, starting an investigation. You got Fife Simonton, who comes out and publicly says one thing. And then obviously he comes out and says that he saw a craft. And so it's very compelling to me to kind of go through all of that and to understand what did happen and sort of tie that investigation sort of back into a story that the audience can then experience and make their own judgment.
Mm-hmm. Now, another controversial aspect of all of this, especially in this area, is like the malevolent and or benevolent nature of the phenomena. A lot of people don't feel one way or the other because, it was just a sighting. How can you tell? However, right. There are a group of people here, including, Lynn Katias did a documentary and she's really into this. Some people feel that it was all a very positive experience, and I think, even feel there might have been some positive sort of psychic phenomena that was going on to enlighten and help people. So that's kind of a controversy too, and it sounds like the film is kind of going to go into a darker area. Have you ran into that, or did you have thoughts that way?
No, I had several conversations with Lynn before we did the film, and she actually participated in the film with us. And I think that her perspective was that she does feel that way. That many people were enlightened by this experience and felt very peaceful and felt very honored to participate in that viewing. My feeling is that this event, and from some of the information and people that had talked to us about the opposite side, the more malevolent side of it, had felt that this was a turning point in our experience with this phenomenon, in the sense that historically there hasn't been any engagement that has resulted in direct contact, or at least any kind of military contact. One of the other sightings to me that had already that I was very excited about reading was the Belgian wave and some of the encounters that happened there. Very similar craft that were described military jets that had been scrambled and sort of engaging different craft. Our sort of topic is sort of exploring the idea that there may have been additional craft south of the city in the Estrella Mountains, and that part of the reason why the flares were there were part of a distraction operation, and that we may have engaged a ship. And there were many reports of scrambled F-16s coming out of Luke Air Force Base to investigate or potentially engage the whatever was over the city. And so that's kind of the basis of where our story goes. And I know that I've seen, Lynn and other people, definitely take the position that they were peaceful. My feeling is that if we provoke a species or some other craft from another world, they're not going to be peaceful anymore. And that's sort of the fiction of our world. And definitely from some of the people that we've talked to, and were consulting with us, that was sort of their opinion as well. And that's why we took that track for the film. But I have a tremendous respect for people, and definitely people on our crew and people who contributed to the film do feel this connection with the lights and this peaceful observation. And there's many people around the world who believe that that other beings are sort of either guiding us or protecting us or sort of keeping us from destroying ourselves. And I respect that. And I think that, I don't know if anyone actually has all of the answers, but I definitely respect everyone's point of view. And that's, I think, what makes our society so interesting right now is that we're all trying to find the truth.
Mm-hmm. So were you able then to obtain maybe anecdotal information or better from military witnesses that maybe haven't come forward before?
Correct. That was one of the things, is that the people that we had worked with were both private investigators and military consultants, and for whatever that's worth, and it was a number of them. We had over 3 that participated in the film. One in particular, which was what I was basing the David Collins materials on, but a number of contractors, people who had worked in the military, specifically on different government programs, and had a lot of access to information. And one of the quotes that was the most significant in my mind that has stuck with me since I started this, and one of the things that continues to drive me on this, is that he said, "Once you know, you can't unknow." Mm-hmm. And that kind of is very cryptic and ominous in one way, but it also it is a life-changing event, because once you actually have definitive evidence, there is no turning back. It's not a question of, oh, well, that just happened that one time, because if you look at 99% of all of the sightings around the world, and you can attribute it to whatever, if it's military craft, if it was environmental conditions, if it was hoaxes, for whatever that is. But that 1% or 0.5% or 0.1% or 1/1,000,000%, if even one of those is real and can be verified and is true, that changes our society forever. Mm-hmm. And that's what I need to know, just as a human. I need to understand that and to believe in that. And I think that many of the people in your audience, I think people around the world really want to know. I think 1 out of 3 Americans, when we were starting to do our research, said, 1 in 3 people in the United States believes that they're outside of our world. And I'm sure it's much higher than that. But considering how much content is out there, and people, just from the entertainment side of all the movies and everything else, the fantasy of believing that there's life, beyond our solar system, it just seems like that has to be the case. Mm-hmm. The question is if they are interacting with us, if they are actually engaging us in some capacity. That's what I need to know. And whether I'm a storyteller, just as a witness, as someone who's part of the audience himself, that's what's driving me.
Mm-hmm. So the witnesses that you have, or testimony that you have that isn't out there currently, I would assume because you've got the movie coming up, and that's the whole purpose of the movie, is to kind of highlight some of this stuff, that nothing, would be definitive, maybe forthcoming before the movie. But after the movie, at least, is there any way that any of these witnesses will go on the record?
that's what we're hoping. That's what we've been talking to them about, is specifically using this as a platform to be able to do that. I think so many people are chastised, or they're insulted, or they're sort of criticized when they talk about this type of thing, and obviously some of them coming from the military side are very, cautious about their personal lives. But I do think that if our message grows and the film is received the way we're hoping to, that's going to give them, encourage them to be able to come forward and talk about that. And definitely some of the material that's in the footage, the footage that's in the film, we have actual real military footage and other things that is presented in the movie. And we're looking to actually, for the U.S. release more of that, even in the theatrical version that's going to come out in February. So the UK version would be a different version of the movie that's already out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's so. I guess originally, though, you had talked about what got you interested. It seemingly was these sightings that you had.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that the first sighting I had, which was the one that started it all off, turned out to be not a sighting, and it was a sighting that I had just seen Star Wars as a kid, and in Tucson, and my dad had taken me out to see the 4th of July fireworks that were going off at A Mountain down in Tucson. And the Great Western Bank building had a great view facing west where you could actually see all the fireworks. And I was out there. I must have been 7, 8 years old. And as we're watching the fireworks, right at sunset, there was a craft maybe about 20, 30 feet across, it looked like. And it had these circular white lights that were going from side to side in a rhythmical pattern, and no sound at all. And it was coming from the west end of town, right at sunset, right across to the east side of town. And it was unbelievable. And I started looking at this thing, and at first I'm like, oh, well, maybe it's a helicopter, it's a plane, it's something else that's there. And it never veered off. It stayed perfectly flat. The lights kept circulating, and it became this moment where I was absolutely enthralled by this and believing that I was actually seeing an actual craft. And my father saw it, and suddenly all the people on the rooftop who were watching the fireworks came over, and there must have been 30, 40 people watching this thing for a good five, maybe 10 minutes. And everyone, and this is before cell phones or anything, taking pictures or whatever, but we were just sharing this moment. And that moment you described about this peaceful moment where you're observing something, I understand that feeling, because I had that feeling even at 8 years old. I felt in tune with these lights, and as it got closer and my energy was just boiling over, all of a sudden I heard a sound that sounded like an engine. And as it got closer, I realized that this was a small Cessna plane with a group of LED lights underneath the fixed wing that was saying Happy 4th of July, and it was cycling from left to right, but because it was coming at us from the horizon, it was perfectly flat, and it looked like it was spinning around in a circle. And and you can just imagine, going from, complete and utter just euphoria to being let down and just realizing it's a plane was just so depressing. But that feeling has stuck with me for my entire life. And I remember that. And I think it was that moment that I fell in love with that idea of what if, right? And that hoax. They weren't trying to do anything at all. They inspired me in doing something, probably unintentionally, completely unintentionally, but it was an amazing feeling. And so as I grew up in Arizona, and I was a Boy Scout and Order of the Arrow, and started to do crazy survival camping trips and other trips up in the mountains, you would see lights. You would see things where you would see craft that were clearly not helicopters, but they would be floating in formations and doing things that you just couldn't explain. And one year coming back from LA, we decided to go down through San Diego and through Yuma back to Tucson. And for almost an hour, there was like a cigar-shaped craft midday. This must have been around noon, and just followed us. It floated almost like a weather balloon, but it was clearly a metallic shape. And it moved with us probably about 10, 20 miles out. You could see it pretty clearly over the desert. And it just stayed perfectly still or kind of moved alongside of us. And whether that was a military craft, whether it was a weather balloon, I have no idea. But when you see things like that repeatedly and with no explanation, to me, that fuels my imagination and my desire to know. Mm-hmm. And that has continued through my life. And I can't say I've ever had a direct encounter or any, actual proof other than what I've seen with my own two eyes. But that's enough to inspire me to keep searching for what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So you've always been into the phenomena.
Absolutely. In fact, it's funny. I was just at a meeting yesterday, and I hooked up with a childhood friend I hadn't seen since grade school, and he pulled out a folder. He said, "I've had this since we were like 7 or 8 years old," and it was this elaborate drawing I had done of these aliens that were based from the creatures from War of the Worlds, and it was this really neat drawing, and he kept it for 40 years, and he actually had it in a folder. He gave it to me as a present, not knowing I was doing this motion picture or anything else like that. It was just further proof that that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
So when it comes to the viral stuff, and talking about, you really have a passion for the field, and we've talked before, and you feel that what your attempt here is with the film and all of the marketing and everything you're doing around it is to get people into this topic and to kind of inspire them like that first moment you had there in Yuma. Right. What about, though, in Yuma, like you said, once you found out what it was, you were kind of bummed out. I think some people kind of have that sympathy and they get worried when it comes to these sort of things, that they find out that something they thought was real is not, and they have that bummed out moment. But
right, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But I guess I wanted you to get your opinion on how what you're doing, your ideas about how you're really attempting to get this topic out there in a way that is more impactful than what's been done before.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things the thing that grounds our movie is it's not just about the phenomenon, but there's a very human element to it. It's about families and of some men that disappeared during that time, and Arizona obviously was going through a dark time during that period, and there's been a number of disappearances that have increased from Maricopa County down south to the border with Mexico, and so the film takes on a very personal element of some men that had disappeared during that time, and we meet with the families, and we actually have a lot of research and actually interviewed a lot of surrounding people around that as well, and so one of the things that we wanted to do was to initially expand out onto the universe of our characters, of the world around Phoenix, not just the event itself, but also what the military was doing, and also what was going on with the government, also what was happening around the world during that time. So the campaign that we're going to be doing is actually sort of a much larger version of the film. The film is an hour and a half, but there's an additional 2 or 3 hours of material that will be coming out surrounding the film. And this is not an ongoing thing that's going to be going on for years. This is going to go on for a period of 7 or 8 weeks. And as we kind of expand on the character in the film, then as the film is announced and everything comes out in February, we're actually going to be combining all of this footage and this campaign into an interactive experience on the new Apple TV, and it'll be the first interactive motion picture actually in the world, because it will be using a lot of our proprietary technology that we've created coming out of the game space, and allowing the audience to not only do their own research and participate, but also to encompass all of this material that's going to be releasing in conjunction with the film. So the idea is on a purely entertainment level, it's allowing the audience to experience a much larger story that doesn't just take place in a motion picture or in a theater, but actually they are sort of guided through this through a variety of mediums, including television and the web, and radio in all sorts of different formats. And then ultimately it'll all come back into this app in this interactive experience for them to be able to do that. And also to then contribute. And as people have their own sightings, if people have material or criticisms or support of elements from the film, the app will actually sort of act as a combination of a Wikipedia, Facebook element, and they can actually comment and add material to the film to help the community grow and support a lot of the information surrounding this. And we're going to do this for other investigations, including Belgium and Shanghai and a lot of other incidents around the world. And my goal is to continue this research and to find more of the facts around what happened and continue that story.
Mm-hmm. I mean, is there danger, or is there some way someone could avoid accidentally mistaking or something as real that is not?
Stumbling onto our campaign by accident.
Uh-huh.
One of the things that we're going to do for the audience, and at the risk of spoiling it for people who are looking for the entertainment side of it, is there's going to be a hashtag that's going to be associated with many of the releases. And for this audience, I would encourage them to look for it at the same time, to not share that with people who want to have the entertainment experience. But if they look for the Disclose Now hashtag, that is going to be a significant part of our campaign, specifically for anything that would be offensive to people who are doing research within that. So that's sort of a safe word, I guess, to look for around our campaign, and that would allow people who have a fear of being hoaxed to know that this is part of that campaign, but also to understand that a lot of our information isn't fictional. A lot of our stuff is actually based in reality. So the blurring of the lines is definitely there, but understanding that it's coming from us. And then obviously we're going to be announcing this at the beginning of the year officially. So this is sort of an advance notice to your listeners and to people in the community who are paying attention to what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at some point, we'll have you back, especially later on when there is an opportunity to, like you said, earlier with maybe other witnesses coming forward, where we can kind of highlight what are the pieces of research, that people can hold on to or to understand what parts of what you've done is the reality and the research versus the fiction.
And I think once you get an opportunity to see the film, when the audience gets to see the movie in February, one of the things I'd very much like to do is also talk about the fact versus fiction in the film, because obviously the viral campaign is the building blocks to help promote awareness about what happened in Phoenix and all of the other surrounding information, but the film takes it on head on. Mm-hmm. And it's a much more direct message of what's there. And starting with the International UFO Congress in February that Open Minds is spearheading, I think we're going to use that as a great opportunity to actually engage the audience for the first time and premiere the film and talk about a lot of this material head on. The film will be announcing there, and we want that to be our first opportunity for the audience to really embrace this and to talk to us very openly about it. And I definitely understand that there will be some people that won't agree with some of the point of view of the film, but I think the bigger message is this genuine goal that we want to promote an awareness for disclosure and to have the audience understand that we are using this entertainment vehicle as a way to promote awareness for this cause.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea, because the UFO Congress is really awesome.
Yeah. It wasn't a subtle plug at all. No, I love what is happening there, because the reason why, and one of the reasons why I had really wanted to have this discussion with you is that I have a tremendous amount of respect for what you do and what Open Minds does, and what there's many focused people in the community that are actually doing very significant research and trying to distinguish what is fact and what is fiction. And you get a filmmaker like myself in the middle of that who mucks up, all of this research, and then you have to spend all of this other time trying to undo what I've just done to discern what you're doing from the rest of the audience. And that's one of the reasons why I did want to speak with you very openly about this, is to not spoil the entertainment value for the audience that's looking for purely that entertainment experience, but for the people who really do want answers and who are looking for the message behind this. I don't want them to take offense of what I'm doing, because I believe with them. And that's a very difficult line to cross, because sometimes you have to shock people to get them to pay attention. Otherwise, they'll just ignore it. And this is not meant to shock the core audience. This is meant to wake up the rest of the world that has been sleeping to what's been going on around them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think what's really important, and what we encourage, I guess, although it is subtle, in that when we invite guests, our guests are not all on the same page. Not everybody agrees. And in fact, my closest friends in this field, we disagree about multiple different things. So it's not that everybody's going to agree. Right. In fact, we have a former professor who believes all abductions are positive, and we have a former professor who's going to talk about how they're all negative. But they're going to have, a civil professional discourse, right. Because I know these guys and that's what they do. And we often have the debates where that happens, so I think that's why it's fair that, and I'm excited that you'll be able to be there, to talk about your opinions, about either the nature of the Phoenix Lights or the nature of the phenomena, or how we go about promoting or creating awareness around this topic.
Absolutely. And like you said, movies like The Fourth Kind, I think from an entertainment standpoint, people were looking at that film saying, well, is this real? Is it not? When I was watching that film, my wife turned to me and she said, wow, they did a good job of recreating the original footage. And I turned to her and said, you realize that the original footage was also created at the same time. And she looked at it and go, oh, and she understood that the filmmaking technique was so, impressive to how they told their story. Mm-hmm. But the downside to that was it in turn distanced the audience because of the way that they treated it only from the Hollywood side of it, and they didn't really understand their audience other than being inspired by it. And I think that that's a very, like I said earlier, it's a fine line to cross. And for me, for someone who genuinely does believe in this and wants to support the community, I'm trying to find a way that obviously not everyone will agree. But at least if I can entertain the audience as well as present them with actual facts of things that did happen, then that allows them to question for themselves. And the more that they question, the more they go online and research. And the more they research, the more they're asking the question is, what aren't we being told? And that promotes the message of what the film is about. And I think that I can do that as a filmmaker in a much more effective way in this format than I can in almost any other medium. And so that's my contribution. And some people might feel that's BS, but that's my true belief. And that's what I'm really trying to do with the movie.
Well, and in all fairness, with, for instance, Hangar One, which was a television show based off of MUFON's case files. However, there was a lot of fiction peppered throughout it.
Right.
However, you didn't have a producer like yourself coming forward and saying, hey, guys, this isn't all reality. We're also trying to entertain, so we do have elements that are fictionalized throughout the show. They hid behind... and even when I tried to get them to come forward just to simply say that, because I think it's just honest and fair, they wouldn't do that. And I lost a lot of respect for those producers, to be honest, when that happened and their whole process. But at least, in your defense, you're coming forward, and not only are you speaking now about it, but you plan to be face-to-face with people to talk about all of this.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things is, obviously coming here from a traditional Hollywood perspective, this wouldn't happen, right? The director's not going to be able to go and be able to have an open discussion about the film before it comes out in theaters for the risk of, compromising the marketing campaign, for the realism of the film, having people believe in what that's there. I feel as trying to be respectful to this audience and to this community is that they do need to understand that obviously there's still going to be a mainstream audience that is going to believe this, and worldwide they are going to believe that. And I don't want it to get into a debunking situation where some of the audience is trying to uncover the truth and then try to have that as a badge to be able to prove to someone else that it is or isn't real. The idea is for us to engage in an actual healthy conversation, much like what you were describing earlier, and that everyone's going to have their own opinions and agree or disagree. This is going to get people talking. And what was amazing to me was that when I did my first screening of the film earlier this year, we had some very powerful buyers and other people in the industry, and they were at this screening, and I was at the back of the theater watching. And as the movie progressed, about a third halfway of the film, all of a sudden, two of the larger buyers that we were working with pulled out their phones in the middle of the screening, and I said, "Oh no, here we go. They're not interested at all. They're getting on their phone in the middle of a screening." But I was behind them, and I could see their screens, and they were Googling all of the information from the movie. And you could see images of the Phoenix Lights and other things that were coming up, including images from our campaign. So that showed me right away that the film was doing what it was set out to do, is get people out looking at the skies and on their computers and researching for themselves to be able to find out what is there and what's behind that. And the fact that this is coming out before the film, I'm hoping that the audience embraces this and understands that this is for a positive means and not trying to take advantage of their goodwill, not trying to hoax them, but really trying to help them sort of, get that support they need to be able to do this. And as this grows, obviously there will be some controversy, and people will say, is that real? It's not. And we will try to support the community from within to be able to guide that. And I will be secretly giving some clues to people like yourself and other people to guide them so they're not offended by that. But don't be surprised if it does blow up in a couple of big places. And it will be all revealed in January, but hopefully between now and then we'll have some good storytelling.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. And before we're done here, because we're already running out of time, I mean, time flies, but I also want to share with people that, what you're doing is not like a mom and pop kind of thing. It's not like a grassroots, very basement kind of movie that not only had you been working with a bigger production company, but there is some buzz that what you all are doing, and I've seen some interviews. If people go out and Google your name, they're going to find interviews that there are people in Hollywood and other places in the media and the mainstream that are really excited about what you're doing, because you're going about distribution and marketing and other aspects of this film in a novel kind of unique way.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be able to do this with a traditional distribution model. That's one of the things that's so amazing coming out of the game space and developing technology. And it's just a nature of our society right now, is that anyone now has the ability to broadcast, to distribute, and to actually get their content out there. And one of the reasons for the viral campaign and all this other things that we're doing is that we're competing against the larger studios, Warner Brothers and Paramount and these bigger studios out there who are fantastic at what they do, and they understand how to get to a mainstream audience. But when you're coming with an independent film like this, you have to be very creative in both how you construct the film, how you market the film, how you distribute the film. And that's why we're inventing technology like this app to be able to get it out. That's why we're embracing the community and trying to give them just so much information so that people are talking about it. And it's been amazing. Just the initial campaign that we did generated over 2 million views in the first 48 hours. And now we have over 20 million engagements for the film worldwide. And the film's not even released yet. It's going to be out in February. So this buzz is sort of building, and we're very excited because this is something that is going to allow the community to then both communicate back with us and expand the story as we move forward with the franchise.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we better strap ourselves in, especially in this community, because we're going to have an interesting couple of months coming up. But you're going to kind of be our smoking man, feeding us some information, and we'll see if we can trust it or not. And I guess it'll all we'll figure it all out coming up here in a few months.
You will, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to speak with me about it today, because I think that this is a really good step to having the community understand, what our intentions are and what I want to be able to do. And I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting a lot of the people at the UFO Congress as well in February, and they can either compliment or blast me at the conference.
Well, I think with you staying in front of things like you are, like doing this, I think a lot of people are really going to appreciate that. I think that when there's a face to the monster, people are more sympathetic, and they're more willing to work with someone. Whereas, when it's a hidden marketing behemoth back there that you feel is just jacking with you, that's different, and that. So I think that people are going to be very appreciative and love talking to you. You've got me excited, not only for the film, but for meeting you and the group, and for the Congress. I was already excited for the Congress. Now I'm even more excited.
Well, it's going to be great. I mean, February is going to be, I think, a big game changer for everything. And for me, this is my first motion picture. So, it's all new in a sense that there is no real guideline of how to do this. And finding my way has been, it's been more, other than, getting married and having my kids, this has been the most important thing I've ever done in my life. And I've worked on hundreds of franchises and really, great projects, but this is a defining moment for me. And it's very important that my audience that I'm catering to understands what I'm trying to do and isn't, pardon the pun, alienated from what I'm trying to do. So, this is something that I think is, it's going to hopefully, affect the entertainment industry as well, to show how, a small film like this can be distributed and how it can get to its core audience in a very direct way. And I'm excited to see it forward.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll be in touch, and everybody can go to, I guess, there's no real place to go to right now. I mean, to find out more about you and your production company, they can go to pcb.cc. Right?
Yeah, and we have phoenixincident.com, which is sort of our meta site, and that will be populated with more information at the beginning of the year. And before then, everything will be sort of hopefully spreading by word of mouth and through inside leaks. So hopefully everyone will be able to find that. But definitely check back to phoenixincident.com for more information.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, man.
Hey, thanks for all your time. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you real soon.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Be well.
Thank you so much to Keith for being on the show. Really interesting guy. I think this is really fun. I, of course, wish him luck and that he is able to get a lot more people into this topic with his movie. So I think, the way he goes about his marketing may be controversial, especially for people in our field, but it's really great that he gave us a heads up, and you all, my listeners, a heads up so we can, keep our eye out. I think that especially for us, since we have some prior notification, it's going to be really fun and interesting, and it'll be fun to talk to him at the UFO Congress when he comes about this campaign and about how he did all of this and to see how it all goes. But it's something interesting and different. Like he said, he's got PCB Productions is one of his websites. The other one is Phoenix Incident. So go check those out and see what you think, and we'll see what we're in store for the next couple of months. I have a feeling that there may be some news items that Martin and I will discuss, possibly that will be created by what might be happening. I just have no idea what they're going to be doing coming up, so we'll see. But either way, hopefully it's a great movie. I mean, and like I said, wish Keith luck, and we'll talk to him some more in the future. Otherwise, speaking of the future, this week it's going to be the future until we have another radio show, because this week Michael and I, which is the entire staff of Open Minds essentially, will be going to the Travis Walton Conference. So if you remember, I talked about this before. The 40th anniversary of the time that Travis Walton says, you know, him and his colleagues went and saw this UFO, and then Travis was zapped by it and disappeared, and apparently was on board this thing. The 40th anniversary of the event of when they saw it is just Thursday. So a lot of us are going up to the location with Travis at the same time at dusk, and we're going to see what happens. If we see a UFO, we'll see if anybody gets beamed. We'll see if anything crazy goes down. At the very least, it's going to be fun to be there with Travis and some of the other witnesses to talk about what they experienced and to see, you know, where everything happened. So the Thursday event, actually, of going out to the site is packed. It's already too full. It's you can go to skyfiresummit.com to look up more about it. However, on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, there will be speakers. I'll be emceeing. Some of the speakers include Leo Sprinkle, who is actually one of the investigators when this all happened. There's going to be a lot of the witnesses. David Hatcher Childress will be there, I know. Paola Harris, Peter Robbins, Ruben Uriarte, Nori Torres. I know I'm going to forget. I'm going to feel bad. James Fox. I'm going to feel bad about forgetting people. But go to Skyfire Summit to see more. And Tracy Torme. So Tracy Torme is a writer of the movie. So he'll be there to talk about the movie. But there also will be possibly more of the witnesses gathering together than have ever gathered together, including the police officer who was first on the scene to talk to these guys about what happened. And at least when it happened, he said they seemed genuine, but nobody knows for sure what he's going to say. So he's going to come and talk about his view of the whole thing and what went down. So this is all going to be really interesting. By the way, Sunday afternoon, they are going back to the site. So, you know, there's only so many people they can get out there at a time. So that's why the Thursday visit got full. But there were so many people interested that they put up another time where people can go out on Sunday, also with Travis, to where it all went down, to take a look and get out there. That there still are some seats for, but those are going very quickly. And from what I understand, there's not very many seats left at all. So you better get there quickly. Skyfiresummit.com. If you want to get a ticket for that. So it's going to be a lot of fun, a beautiful place. The talks are actually going to be in a barn. But like I said, Open Minds will be there, and we will have some exclusive footage and interviews, and we have some exclusive access we've been able to arrange. So we'll be able to bring you some more about that after it happens. So that's where we'll be. Because we're going to be so busy with that, we won't have a UFO report nor a UFO radio until the week after this all goes down. Apologize for that, but it's going to be really cool. You guys are going to really appreciate, I think, all this cool stuff. So that ought to be fun. Otherwise, I guess, you know, we do have a new UFO report that just went up on Friday. That was about the Siberian sightings, where you can see those pictures, the sighting that Martin and I had talked about. Also, we talked about UFO data. You know, we had Mark Rottinger on last week, so we talked more about that project that's going on and another UFO video, actually one I mentioned earlier with Martin. So check that out. The UFO Congress, we have new speakers going up there on a regular basis. I have new speakers that have confirmed that we'll have more information up. We just released just now on this show, is that we're going to have this movie screening, and I think this is going to be a big deal because from what I understand, the media is really picking up on this movie, and there's going to be a lot of media around it, and the premiere happening at the UFO Congress. So as usual, and of course, speaking of films premiering, one of our winners, Tanya, created this film a couple years ago called Solar. Oh man, I'm gonna have to apologize to Tanya for forgetting the name. But anyway, great movie that won, People's Choice, and won these EB awards. She's making a new UFO movie that's going to be at the Congress. Of course, Jeremy Corbell's going to have new films released at the UFO Congress. So there's going to be a lot going on as far as UFO documentaries and films being screened at the UFO Congress as well. So a lot of really cool stuff. So go to ufocongress.com or openminds.tv. At openminds.tv, you can also read all the stories that Martin and I talked about and and some of this other cool stuff. So I want to thank Caleb Hanks for the opening and close music. It's awesome. His site is the Clerk Chronicles. You can find a link to it at the Open Minds UFO radio page. And I want to thank you, the listeners, because you're so awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. I hope you enjoyed some of this exclusive content that Keith Arem, this guy wanted to bring to you all in particular, to our listeners for Open Minds, because he really appreciates you all and everyone who listens and pays attention to Open Minds. So thank you to him for that. So cool stuff, huh? Let us know what you think, too. Go to the site or go to YouTube or go to our Facebook. Oh, yeah, and I should say, where you should go? We have a new Facebook group where we've got lots of really cool discussions going on. It's called Open Minds UFO News. It's a group. It's a closed group. So you got to go there and say, can I join? Am I worthy? And what makes you worthy? Just being a decent human being. That's all we ask. It's troll free. So people who get in there and are mean and are just being disgusting, some of you probably have been through this. I have read some of the most disgusting and just rude and vile things in comments on the internet that I've ever seen in my life. And it's like, how can someone say something like this to people they don't even know? It's a sad state of affairs. But if you go to our Open Minds UFO News Facebook group, you won't have to experience that, because anybody who does that kind of thing gets booted, and that's why you have to ask to join. We'll let you in, and as long as you act like a decent human being, you're going to be fine. And I know all of you are more than decent human beings. I know you all are stellar individuals and prime examples for humanity and the human race. If only all humans could be like the Open Minds radio listeners.